Jeremy and Brian talked a lot about the future of youth sports in the industry and where it's going. I think it's important that we take a moment to talk about the foundation and see some excellent examples, in my opinion, of those who participated in youth sports and where it led their career and what they did with themselves. So it's really why sports matter. Look at these names. I'm just impressed. Tiki Barber. Anybody know him? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. He's great, right? Give him a round of applause. He's getting ready to come up. Played with the Giants, was in the league for 10 years. He has a sports show on CBS. I think it's amazing that he's here today. Tiki, if you could come up so everyone can see you and you can grab a seat. This is mine, though. This is my seat. You get anyone you want. This next gentleman, Rich Kleiman, he is the manager for a gentleman by the name of Kevin Durant. He plays basketball, arguably the best player in the world. Have you guys heard of Kevin Durant? You have. I need you guys to get excited. I'm not just saying Tina from around the street. Come on. Rich also has a production company with Kevin, and they're doing some great things. Have you seen The Boardroom on ESPN? It's another one of their projects that they're working on, which I think is great, Rich. And Rich also started his career at Rock Nation. He helped start the sports department there. It's not necessarily a department, but Rock Nation Sports, if you will. So Rich Kleiman, please come on up. He's also a coach. Swin Cash. What do you say about, yeah, exactly, right? UConn, anybody familiar with the UConn basketball team, the women's basketball team? Right. Do you know Swin was a part of that championship team? I think you guys won twice while you were there, right? It should have been 3. They won twice. She also has Olympic gold. And currently, she was with WNBA. Remember, she played for Liberty? I mean, she's done everything. The list goes on and on. But now the next level of her career, and I'm so excited about watching how her career continues to evolve, and she's doing so many different things. She's the president of player operations. I may have that title incorrect, but you're gonna correct me, for the New Orleans Pelicans. Like, how great is that? She's literally in the front office for the Pelicans. Close. I was off by a notch. What's the title, Swin? What is it?
Vice President.
Vice President. She's the president and CEO of the New Orleans Pelicans, if you guys could just... I love to give her more than that. All right, guys, so we're going to start this panel. I'm going to ask a couple of quick questions. It's really about why sports matters, and if you can, the way that we can do this is just very conversationally. I don't necessarily need to ask you guys a bunch of questions, but Tiki, talk to me about your youth and the sports you played and why it was so important for you.
One, because I think me and my twin brother knew that we had a God-given ability that made us a little bit advantaged over others, and it was a way for us to fit in. We were really shy. You would know this, didn't have a radio show, and I'm everywhere these days, but when I was young, I was shy. And so playing sports made me fit in. It made me feel accepted. We grew up in Roanoke, Virginia, but on the county side of Roanoke, not the city side of Roanoke. So there was literally 5 black kids in our high school of 300 per class. And so sports was our way to be accepted, and we were good, and it drove us forward in our lives. But I think the most important thing, and I tell this to kids when I go talk to high schools or those that are pursuing some sport endeavor, if and when you make it with that God-given ability, you automatically raise your floor, right? So she asked, what do I mean by that? So when you become a college athlete, especially when you become a professional athlete, there's the level for you to fall is raised, right? It can still happen, and we've seen it happen, but the expectation, the opportunity, the jumping off points that would not have existed are now there. And so sports provided that for me. And so when I talk to kids, that's what I tell them. Yes, it's fun. You're going to make friends. You're going to have achievements. You're going to have failures. But at the end of the day, you're creating a platform, a plateau that you can jump up from. And I think that's one of the most important things that youth sports provides.
Rich?
Yeah, I mean, I think separate from what Tiki said, I knew pretty early on that I didn't have that God-given ability. Not as early as I probably should have, but early enough to not embarrass myself. But I think what's interesting about those memories in my life, and I think it from any professional athlete that I've come into contact with and just anyone else that's engaged in youth sports as a kid, is that regardless of your skill level, in a lot of ways, that moment in your life was like your haven, and that was your escape from everything you were going through. And regardless of how great your upbringing was or how much struggle you had, those memories and those moments seem to stand out for everybody. So I think that it's like an interesting time in your life where if you're in a group where the organizers and the group take it as serious as you take it as a kid, it ends up being some of the most remarkable moments of your life, because you're never really interacting with anyone of all different skill levels like you do at that age in your life, and be able to do it for like one common goal. And it's amazing, because no matter how much success you end up achieving in life, I've never ran into somebody that played youth sports as a kid that doesn't have a memory that brings a certain joy to them that nothing else in their life can repeat. So I always watch with my daughters now who play, who also don't know yet that they don't have that God-given ability.
What do
But
they play?
they play basketball and soccer, they dance, they do it all. But it's, to me, I can tell how serious they take it by how serious the program's taken. And when the stakes are made to be as serious as they deserve to be, because as a kid, it feels that big, then you see them thrive that much more.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing? When you say take it seriously, what do you mean? And what
Well, I
capacity?
think it's a great thing. I mean, I think that take it seriously doesn't mean to instill this like need to make it in order to succeed. Taking it seriously means making sure that like the organization, the program, the technology, the coaches, the boundaries with parents, all the things that are needed in order to run a successful program are taken as seriously as you know you wanted it when you were a 12-year-old kid.
I think for me, my foundation was set through youth sports. And what I mean by that is at a very young age, I grew up in humble beginnings outside of Pittsburgh in the projects of McKeesport in Harrison Village. And the one thing that I learned early on through sports was that playing basketball and getting in between those lines was kind of the equalizer, I would say, because when I started playing AAU, when I started playing in different organizations, my mom was working 2 jobs. My dad was off in the war and serving our country. And so I came from a unique situation where when I got in between those lines, there were kids that were coming to play that had 2-parent homes. There were some parents that I would hear rumbling about because I was the kid that got a scholarship to be able to be on the team, or somebody that was a sponsored kid. But when we got in between those lines, I was able to show my talent, and we all were on the same playing field. And I never talked about it as much. My mom and I would have deep conversations about race, about sports, about education, all those different things, but it wasn't something you talked about outside of the house. But as a young kid at 12, 13 years old, I was able to apply those things because I was seeing them and living them. I also learned through youth sports the discipline of, I think one of the things you said, Rich, was trying to achieve a goal. Like, my coaches were very serious about, you want to get a scholarship. Everything was based off of getting a scholarship. Like, they saw talent in me, but at the same time, my mom told them, if my daughter's coming here, it's because she's getting good grades and we're trying to get a scholarship. So they knew what our goals were early on, and they were helping me achieve that. And every time I thought that I wanted to slack off, or I'm talented enough, I don't have to, work as hard, they kept trying to instill those things in me. What are your goals? What are you thinking about? And so that drove me a lot when I was really young. And then nowadays, one of the things I see with coaches, organizations is what I like to call the 1 through 12 ribbon, where everybody gets a ribbon, a participation certificate, and everybody's like, well, we want to make everybody feel good. Well, I learned a lot of lessons through times when I didn't feel great or when I lost. And so some of the best organizations that I was a part of and were able to play with, I learned the values of consistency, of discipline, and also of showing up every day.
You said a couple of things. First, a lot of great things, but The fact that sports is the great equalizer, I mean, I think everyone can agree with that, and it's also unifying. When you think back when you were a kid, you talk about organizations and people and they, and you talk about it in broad terms, but for the folks in this room who obviously want to work with, have a great organization, and they want their coaches to be great, and they want to be able to discipline or teach disciplinary skills to these kids, what were some of the key organizations that stood out to you? What were those qualities?
Yeah, like some of the basic things where, you know, we were getting a water break, right? They had this rule where it was like, all right, when coach said, all right, blew the whistle, we had to jog over to get water. Well, you immediately knew the kids that listened right away because we would jog over, and some kids who maybe felt like, I don't feel like jogging, I don't feel like doing this, but their parents were at every single practice in the stands were like, all right, mom and dad's over this, I don't have to do it. Or our coaches would be like, everybody get back over here on the line or you guys aren't gonna get water. And we're like, why? And then he would tell us why. Where now, and because I obviously too have a youth program, I realized that sometimes we don't do certain things because we're afraid of whether it's the parents, whether it's the organization. And so for me, seeing that at a young age, that was discipline to me. Like, we're all accountable for our actions. If we're doing this as a team, we're doing it together. And so I really, I love organizations like that, and that's just how I grew up.
I'm just impressed you got water breaks. They didn't give us those back in the day. I think I would add to that and say, so I grew up with a single mom, and my dad was out of the picture. We've since reconciled. But for a lot of my youth, my dad wasn't around. And so my coaches were my dads. I think Ken Mack, who was my college running back coach, taught me how to shave, you know? So sometimes I don't know, and especially now, if that feel is still there, right? You are my child. Right? I'm coaching you, and I need to discipline you, I need to encourage you, but you're also my child. I think that was one of the things that helped me feel accountable to my team and my teammates, and particularly my coaches, because I felt like they were a father figure.
Why do you feel like that's not there now?
Because you're not allowed to touch. You're not allowed to, I mean, my coach would hit me, you know? And so you're not allowed to do these things. Right?
That's a no-no.
Right? It's a different world. I think community has been lost a little bit, but it's still there in sports. Right? And this is a cliche, but it's true. Like, if I got in trouble, like my buddy Chris's mom and then Steve's mom would yell at me as I was coming home. And so you were not just letting down my mom, I was letting down Steve's mom and Chris's mom in the village. So the village mentality has gone a little bit because we get so insular. We're like just worried about ourselves. But sports still has that. And that's why youth sports is so paramount. Because otherwise you think you can sit on your iPhone or sit watching whatever game you're going to play for your entire existence.
And I thought there was a great question that was asked earlier, and it was, why are you here? Why are you involved in youth sports? And the one thing that I struggle with right now is because even working with the Pelicans and being in the front office, I've gotten more requests from people to sponsor something, or I have this program that's doing X, Y, and Z. We've had this many college Division I players and this and that, the other. Those are all great things, but why are you doing it? Why do you want to be around kids? Why do you want to see kids be successful? Because I can tell you this straight from the heart. I could tell you right now, when I was 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, I could tell you the coaches that cared about me and the coaches that wanted to be standing there whenever Coach Oriema was coming through the door to talk to me, when Coach Pat Summitt was coming through the door to talk to me. But didn't want to be there whenever Swin was getting a C or shouldn't have been doing the things I needed to be doing to be able to get an A in the classroom. Why are you involved in youth sports? If your heart's not in it and this is just about money and how to get notoriety or how to have the best organization because it brings you all those benefits, you need to step aside. We have too much of that going on right now in this country that we need to have authentic people who genuinely care that what you're putting into the youth right now from a sports standpoint I'm telling you, it will change the direction of all of the youth that will be in businesses, running companies, running sports, running the NBA, WNBA, NHL. It is important. It affects us in a way that helps us be better leaders. And if you're not in it for the right reasons, and I'm not saying any of you aren't in here, I'm just calling it like I see it, is that there's too much right now in youth sports that don't add up to what it needs to be for our kids.
Pastor Swin Cash will be taking a collection afterwards. No, that was great. And I really appreciate you for saying that, because I know you're speaking that from your heart and you're a woman of your word. You live that. Rich, to that end, wanted to ask you, in terms of your career, how do youth sports or sports in general play a role for you when you were a kid and into your career journey right now, where you are?
Everything. I mean, I think to your point, I had a coach as a kid that, now looking back on it, probably knew that I wasn't going to play professional sports, but had no problem watching film with me, looking through media books of the Knicks and looking who the front office was and talking to me about what it was that went on in the NBA and about trades, and having that rapport that made me feel like they were in this for me and filled a role in my life that clearly I wasn't able to get, or wasn't getting that same fulfillment from somewhere else. And I think it is the coach's role to be able to identify what it is that every kid needs, because you try to do your best to state these kind of blanket goals as an organization and as a team. But it's the most crucial time in these kids' lives, that in order to understand that, like, the focus of why they're doing sports is different for every one of them, and that there's a certain level of importance that we all rest into this league, into this team, that doesn't always result in making it to the NBA or making it into college basketball to get a scholarship, that if you take that extra time and understand that these kids are doing this because at the root of it, they fell in love with sports as a kid, and you fall in love with sports because of what you watch and because of what you view. And when I went into these organizations and they kept my stats and they named our team names after professional teams, and they let us pick the jerseys of the players that we loved as a kid, and they let us wear that extra equipment that the kid wore, that the player wore on TV, when they put that focus into understanding how important that was to me, I thrived in it. And I look back at those moments, and there's very few in your life. Like, that's the thing that you don't want to harp to a child, because you don't want them to understand how quickly this all kind of moves throughout life. But those moments, when I was a kid, it was like yesterday. There's no replacing that feeling, and you have to give them that same sense of importance. Because even though you understand how much is to come in that moment is everything for them. And I just remember the coaches talking to me about, like, I would come back and I had such different things that I wanted to explore. Like, I loved the idea of everything that went on in the NBA. To me, it was the GMs, the coaches, the trades, everything about it. And I remember I had a coach that filled that void for me, that he didn't look at me as like, all right, well, you're not all-city point guard. Let me keep this conversation moving, get to this guy. He understood that, to me, that element of the game was everything. And I could tell now that, like, that relationship and that interaction I had and the importance that he put on that has played incredible measures in my, like, ability to stick with it and know that when high school sports was over, that sports wasn't over for me.
Sounds like he was grooming you to take over the Knicks at some point.
Yeah.
Just saying.
He's right.
Oh, do we have breaking news? Do you want to break it right here or no? Later?
No.
Okay, later. He's not going to tell us now. What I think is interesting, that all three of you keep talking about coaches and what they meant to you and how important they were in your life. Now, for people who run these organizations who have to bring in coaches, what advice are you giving them? Because it's a very personal thing for every one of you, and a coach has changed everyone's life. So what should they be looking for? What type of organization should they want to run in terms of ideally? Because I'm sure everyone thinks that's what they're doing, but ideally.
Yeah, I mean, I can just say I think it's about consistency. You know, I think that I've seen with my daughters, the coaches have changed a lot year to year, or moved around, or there's a lot of the business of it that comes up. And I understand that, because, you know, I think in building it as a business, it allows you to give the resources to these kids that I just talked about, that make it all seems so much bigger, or seemed as big as it should be. But I think that those voices, to what everyone is saying, that played a part in our life, don't happen for a year and then out. They don't happen for a season and then, hey, we're going to move this girl up to this level, and this 14-year-old coach is going to stay with them. That consistency and that need to have that kind of repetition and that voice and that relationship and that comfort, because you're changing every year. As a child, you're changing every year, and things that you were concerned about the year earlier, and those insecurities are different the next year. And being able to have some continuity with that adult figure in your life and with that coach, and some sense of kind of the commitment to you, and they know that if I see them year after year or season after season, that kind of commitment level, it only puts the emphasis on you to have to give so much back. And then the parents develop a certain level of trust and a certain relationship with the coach where they don't have to be as kind of all over and hands-on and judgmental about the process. And that kind of like give and take a bit is important, because even though the coaches clearly are always looking at certain points in their life to keep moving, I think the best way to kind of equip your organization to have these coaches stay true and stay committed to these kids for a longer period of time, the better served the program would be.
I think another thing to Rich is to add on to Rich is diversity. Right? Sports is the most diverse vehicle in this country. It doesn't matter who you are, what you look like, really, on game day or practice day. And so you're going to see all ethnicities and different types of individuals. So diversity in the coaching staffs, I think, is important. That's racially. But I also think stylistically. So some coaches need to be nurturing. Others need to be tough, let's face it. Right? You need to instill the idea of what it means to win. And not that you're pushing winning at all costs, but you can't let them get away with not caring. Kids get away with not caring. And so you need some diversity in the style of coaching. And I'll give you an example. I have 6 kids. My oldest is 17. My youngest is 3. But from 17 to 5, which is my 5th one, it's football, it's soccer, basketball, and then competitive cheer, which is probably the most intense one, by the way. Yeah. Like, they don't let us watch. I'm serious. Like, they're going to steal the routines.
I know for a fact, yes.
Are you kidding me? But so
you're stealing signs, you're stealing cheer.
They're 5.
They're
5.
Yes.
She's 5 years old.
I understand. It's not funny.
Tracy, my wife, got to watch for the first time after 3 months yesterday. But I've seen my kids have coaches that are yelling for no reason, and I almost want to go down there and shake him. Like, you realize that he's not understanding what your gripe is, or what your issue is with him, because it's lost in the noise. It's lost in the volume. But I've also seen coaches who will, when he makes a mistake, my oldest, when he makes a mistake, they'll pull him aside, talk to him softly, calmly, and then he gets it. And so different kids learn different ways. So you have to have diversity in how you interact with youth.
I think that's important. Swin?
Yeah, and I could actually speak to this because right now, and I feel like we're going through it with the Pelicans, and when I was brought in, one of the things that David Griffin said is that we had to create this ecosystem where everybody kind of understanding not only roles, responsibilities, but what our core values were. And I think as an organization, you come in right away, you want to evaluate whether it's your coaches, whether it's your volunteers, whoever it is, and you have to feel like who are the people that align with what your vision is, right? And then you have to stay true to it. A lot of times you get so big and your organization grows, and I think, Rich, you said something that was so important. Coaches sometimes want to leave, and then you're trying to recruit other coaches. But a lot of times, as you're growing and getting players and bringing more players in, you also have to grow your staff. And what I mean by that is their own individual growth. How are you allowing somebody to become a better coach? Are you putting infrastructure around them to have success that makes them want to stay with your organization and to continue to contribute to the kids? So I think it all plays its part within this ecosystem that you're trying to build. But I think that it's very crucial that the coaches have the ability to understand how to connect with different players. I was one of those players where Coach Oriama could yell at me all day long in college, and I remember always looking up at the banners, and at one point, I remember him saying, like, what the you looking at up there? And I told him I just would focus on something else because I knew eventually, like, you're gonna calm down, and then whatever you're gonna say, I'm gonna wanna hear that second part because that's what you truly meant. And then
That's a good philosophy.
His assistant coach, Chris Daly, she always knew how to say it in a way that would connect with me, right? And so that just goes back to everything we've been talking about up here is understand the diversity in your coaching staff, understand how you can grow them, and they can be better. And then your organization, everybody will fill in to create the ecosystem and the vision that you have.
I think that is so important, what they just said, diversity in coaching staff. You're right, because if someone's yelling at you, you can't, it may not register for you, but someone else can say it, and you got it. You hear it in a different way. We have 3 minutes left. Before we wrap up this panel, I had a couple of quick questions for you all. Tiki, did you run the marathon yesterday?
I did. The greatest marathon in New York.
I was like, I think it says here he ran it, and what was your time?
4:18.
Look at you!
But my teammate, Jason Sehorn, ran 3:19.
Oh. We're still competitive.
Dude, I couldn't
We're
even
still
look at it. I was
competitive.
like, dude, I can't even stand around
Yeah.
here. It was his first one, too. I've done 12.
That was his first marathon, 3:19. That's rude.
It is rude.
Yeah. As we wrap, I would like each of you to leave. Perhaps maybe it's some advice, maybe it's a key takeaway, something that you all have that you remember from youth sports for when you were obviously a youth.
Yeah, so
why it was so important.
Mine is simple. Encourage kids to do as much as they possibly can. Different types of sports. I saw this with my oldest in baseball. They tried to like smash him into baseball year round. I said that you can't do that. You're going to learn so many skills from everything else you do. And from a personal standpoint, I was a good football player, but I was also a good wrestler. And so I learned so much about my body and body control, which ultimately made me a good running back because I knew it. And then I ran track. And so speed and agility with body, manipulation, married with football, made me the player that I ultimately became. So diversity in sports is so important.
Yeah. You want to go? Okay. Yeah, I mean, I can speak, like, I know from my experiences talking to Kevin about what his rec center was for him as a child, and how a lot of ways at that rec center, while he kind of came of age as a basketball player, every moment that took place in his life, the first time that he had to like cram for a test, first time he asked a girl out, all those things took place within this rec center. And I think that had he not had a coach that was able to wear two hats at one time and be his basketball coach and realize that he had this like major career in front of him, but took time to remember that he was also a child and that had real things that were going on, but allowed that to happen within that world. Because I think, as both of you can attest for, when you get to that next level, sports occupies almost all of your life. And if you don't allow yourself to be human along the way and have coaches and have organizers that are able to communicate with you and remind you that those kind of things are normal and that everything that you're going through is normal and that it plays a part in developing who you are as an athlete, as a student, as a person, that, it can get very tricky for an athlete at times as they're coming up, because you start to think that maybe those are things you shouldn't be thinking about and you should put all your focus towards sports. But I think that like humanizing it and realizing that there's like a very serious time to take youth sports, and then time to also like allow your kids to unwind and talk to them and communicate with them and talk about their studies and talk about their life and what's going on, because you notice a lot that these kids are just dying to communicate this stuff, and you have to have that kind of open door a bit. And then I think that trust factor then starts to lend both ways.
I live by the words, to whom much is given, much is required. And I feel like each and every one of us that are in here today, you've been blessed to be sitting here. You are influencers in the youth, the kids of tomorrow. So take that power, take that energy, and put things around them that can help them be better humans, better athletes, better contributors to our society. And so I think by putting those auxiliary things in place, whether it's programs to help them grow and mature, the diversity that they need to see people that look like them, to be in, Cari, you say it all the time, create space for kids to be in a space that is safe and feel like they are part of a community is huge. And so I think we're all blessed, and I hope we continue to give it back to our youth.
I love it. Give it up, you guys. Swin Cash, Rich Kleiman, Tiki Barber, Why Sports Matter. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate you for being here.